You know, it must be said, I do still get comments these days from people who tell me that they think that my Tomb Raider retrospective was one of the best things I ever did. Mostly because you could tell that I really cared a lot about the series, and I guess that's a big deal. I mean, that's why Sonic also took off in a way, because it's a big part of my childhood too. You can tell that there's more interest from me into the series. It's also really nice when I hear from somebody who tells me that they weren't a fan of Tomb Raider before they watched that series, and the series is what made them actually get into Tomb Raider. And that's amazing to me. I never expected that kind of response. Frankly, when I first made that retrospective, I never thought it was going to do that well. Back then, it was just Sonic, Sonic, Sonic. And trying to inject some other thing that I like into something, it doesn't always fit. And I try really hard, and it doesn't always work out, but Tomb Raider did. It worked out so much better than I thought it would. And because of that, one of the biggest requests I have always gotten, ever since that retrospective, is, Darkness, why can't you talk about the Tomb Raider movies? Do it! Okay.
Makes me question why!
So the initial Tomb Raider movie was actually a bit of a surprise for me when I was a kid. I don't know, the idea of a movie based off of a video game was new for me. I wasn't aware of the Super Mario Brothers movie or the Street Fighter movie before this, nor was I aware of the Mortal Kombat movie or anything like that. I was a little more isolated as a gamer. I was used to playing the games that I enjoyed, and back then there was no Sonic movie even remotely on the table. Although the OVA would have been out by this point, my internet was not such that I could really know about it back then. But it must be said, for a video game movie, there was a lot of things going for this right out of the gate. To begin with, it had a pretty decent budget for a movie of this type, so that allowed for a lot of effects. It also brought in an all-star cast to play most of the main roles, in particular starring Angelina Jolie as Lara Croft. And frankly, in terms of casting an old-school Lara Croft, I don't think it was possible to get a more perfect person for the role. Not only is she a great actress, but Angelina just looks like Lara Croft. She was also a big fan of the character as well, which just makes it even better. She wasn't being forced into the role, and you know, she actually cared about the production. You always want that out of an actor when it comes to something like this. That being said, looking at the movie now, it's hard to explain why I think it's good. Because if you actually look at, say, actual critic reviews, which is like half the reason why I ignore professional movie critics half the time, people usually slam this movie as being awful. They are wrong. This is important for me to clarify. I know I haven't said that about someone's opinion in a long time, but this is like one time where I'm like, you guys just don't get it. The thing about the Tomb Raider movie, and I think this is important to clarify, is that it was clear from the get-go and from watching it that these people actually played the games and were trying to literally take the games and put it into movie form. Now, that doesn't always work out so well. In this case, I think it resulted in a much better outcome than would have otherwise, but that's why there's certain things about the movie that seem a little bit more jarring than they otherwise would. But I'm going to address that as we go, because I'm going to try to do this as detailed as I can, because this has been a long time coming. People have been asking about this for so many years, and frankly I should have done it way sooner, but better late than never. Just, it's here. It's fine. Let's talk about it. Actually, before I begin, I know, I'm still stalling. I'm terrible. I apologize. But one other thing I really like about this situation when it comes to making a Tomb Raider movie is that when it comes to Lara's backstory, back then, it was rather vague. There were things that were established, that she was filthy stinking rich, that most of the money came from her parents, and that was the reason she was able to go and do what she did. But beyond that, there were a lot of things that weren't clear. Actually, if you read the lore from the manual from the very first game, both her parents are still alive and heavily disapprove of her behavior. The movie retcons this by pointing out that both her parents are actually deceased. Instead of just being a child prodigy who wanted to go her own way, despite her parents disapproving, she's actually a child prodigy who's trying to follow in her father's footsteps, who was also a very well-respected and successful archaeologist in his own right. Not only did Crystal Dynamics lift that aspect for the initial soft reboot of the series, but they also used that same aspect for their hard reboot of the series. So it's something that's been established in Lara's past for a long time. However, I think it's important to clarify that this is a fact that was only introduced by the movie, not the games. And that's just... has that ever happened before, where a movie introduces an element to the games and it winds up better? Because I can think of a few examples of that happening, but usually that winds up for the worse. Like the Street Fighter cartoon series, the American one, it was directly based off of the movie, but they introduced all the things the movie got wrong, too, about certain characters' lore, so the show was like, okay. People usually laugh at it now. Yes! But this is like the one time where they kind of took a pretty lackadaisical, inconclusive backstory and flushed it out and made it better. I don't know how that happens, but anyway, let's get to the actual movie. I am stalling so bad. Most of you already stopped watching by now. I have already ruined everything like I always do. I am a failure. Okay, but seriously, let's start talking about this movie. So our movie starts off with a presumed tomb that Lara must be raiding. Haha, you see what they did there? They started it off great. We're already in a tomb. We're not really in a tomb. Spoiler on that. But it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's fine. The idea of this scene is not only give us a solid action beat in the very beginning of the movie, which is great, but it also establishes how they're going to introduce certain elements from the game and have them make sense in the real world. The one thing I love about Jolie, especially in this movie, is that she has a habit of doing her own stunts, which she did for this particular film. So already we're off to a great start. Most of the stunt work is actually pretty fantastic, and she moves like you'd think Lara Croft would move. She's being attacked by this weird robot thing, which is the first dead giveaway that she isn't actually in an ancient tomb. But another thing I like about this is that the one thing that was consistent about the old Tomb Raider games, up until Angel of Darkness changed everything and ruined everything, and then they fixed everything in Legend and it was better, was that Lara's regular pistols, the ones she has equipped all the time from the beginning of the game, never seem to run out of ammo. And that's never actually explained in the games how that works. However, the movie felt the need to try to blend that with real-world logic. In effect, Lara is actually equipped with these awesome reload mechanisms on her hips, and she can reload her guns on the fly without having to stop shooting for any real length of time. It's actually really awesome to see. It's such a cool concept, and I actually wish the games, like more modern series, might have included that to kind of limit the pistols a little bit, because it is silly that you don't have to reload them, but still keep with the original idea of Tomb Raider, where she always seems to have these pistols. It's just an awesome little mechanism. They didn't even have to add this sort of thing. They could have just had it in the real world where she has to reload like a normal person, but instead they tried to inject this game logic into it and tried to make it work. That to me tells me how hard these people were trying to make this a competent movie and a competent game movie experience. Anyway, Lara's having some issues with this weird cyborg robot thing, whatever the heck it is, which just will not leave her alone. She dumps so many bullets into this thing and it just doesn't go down. It even almost takes her head off. I hope what she's trying to get here is worth it, but Lara is used to dangerous situations. She gets off on that, whatever. Apparently bullets don't really affect this thing, but, you know, Lara jumping on its back and hammering it with the blunt end of her pistol, oh, that actually puts it down. Except when it doesn't. And then she just tells it to stop. And this is where things get weird. I don't understand what's going on. What's happening? Oh, what? That was training? That was Lara Croft's training exercise? Are you insane? What? Who? Wait. Everything back up. I have so many questions. Okay, I understand Lara's training is probably going to be really tense and really overwhelming because of what she puts her through when she's actually in danger. But you don't need to actually have a robot, you know, almost decapitate you in order to get a decent training experience. To be fair, Lara herself presents this question to her tech hacker employee, Bryce.
Was it programmed to stop before it took my head off?
Oh, well, that would be a
No.
You see, Bryce, this is the kind of oversight that's gonna get you replaced with Zip eventually. He's not gonna almost take your employer's head off. And then Bryce starts whining about her using live fire. What was she supposed to use? Like, what, she was gonna shoot blanks at it because, oh yeah, that's gonna get it to stop. Real bullets didn't even get it to stop. Can we talk about how Bryce designed this robot that is way more advanced than even military robots can possibly be? Have you thought about selling it or anything? I don't know. I just feel like you might be, you know, underselling your point by creating this robot who's called Simon, by the way, for just a training exercise. Also, Simon doesn't really do anything in the rest of the movie, which is kind of annoying because I feel like they could have used him more. Not that he didn't try. Lara's fault for using too much live ammunition, but again, we're back to the whole, it almost took her head off. I just shot it too. Anyway, at this point, Lara's butler walks in. By the way, this is not Winston from the games. He's good, I like him, he's a cool character, but I just always thought it was odd they replaced Lara's classic butler. I think it's because they wanted someone who wasn't just a rickety old man, which is all Winston was by this point. So I get the logic that they didn't want someone just walking around like, "Hello, Lady Croft, I am here with the tea. Oh, you're going over here now? Oh, okay, I'll follow you with the tea. That's what I do around here. I follow with the tea. The tea!" Anyway, intercut with this, we get a scene of the main villains, who are the Illuminati of this universe. And by of this universe, I mean it's literally the Illuminati. No, that's not a meme. For once. It's not a joke, I'm not exaggerating. Literally, the enemies in this plot are the Illuminati. They are searching for an ancient triangle called the Triangle of Light that will give them the ability to control time itself. And they have been waiting 5,000 years to be able to possess this thing because it's separated into two pieces and you can only get each piece when the planets align in a very certain way and only for a brief moment because the pieces are not just sealed in temples but they are also sealed in pockets of time, which is actually an insanely good concept for an ancient artifact for Lara to be looking for. So okay, the Illuminati might be a bit of a stretch, but it actually makes sense given what the Illuminati are rumored to be like. I mean, this seems like how they would be. Also, the main villain of the movie, though he isn't actually the leader of the Illuminati, is apparently Dr. Isaacs from Resident Evil. Now, to be completely fair to Ian Glenn here, the dude is actually a really, really top-notch actor, and I always love him in villainous roles. Because even when he's in bad movies, and the Resident Evil movies are not exactly the greatest movies in the universe, he himself is always entertaining. He just comes off with this arrogant, villainous, slimy aura, like he's gonna go and just kill a cat for no reason because he can. He's just like, comes off just as such a jerk. Also, you leave my cat alone. Mine. Anyway, cutting back to Lara for a second. Apparently, this is also the anniversary of her father's death. It's a sad day in the life of Lara Croft. Which I get. Anywho, in the middle of the night, Lara detects some ticking coming from her house because she has acute hearing and can hear this weird stuff. In any event, she finds a clock that just started ticking at the start of the planetary alignment, and she rushes to Bryce to figure out what it is. He is alarmingly lazy about the whole thing, and really, this is gonna get you fired, Bryce. I'm telling you, she's gonna bring in Zip, and Zip is always rare and ready to do whatever Lara asks. And you're just like, I don't want to, it's too early. And then he says he needs to get his coffee. And then it is decaf coffee, and he seems happy about this. What's the point of having a coffee in the morning if it's not actual coffee? I feel like I'm getting sidetracked. Okay, so Bryce insists on taking this thing apart one by one, piece by piece, without actually alarming anything. But Lara has a much more direct approach. Whether or not she actually broke the object inside is irrelevant, because Lara's always right, even when her right happens to be a hammer to whatever it is she's trying to get open. You know, it actually makes sense that in every new Tomb Raider game, she winds up destroying every single tomb she actually raids it by leaving it. Just everything falls apart as soon as she touches it. It's just Lara's thing. Anyway, they find another weird clock thing that goes to a place. So she takes to a friend who happens to be a clock expert, also running through traffic at the speed of sound along the way. And where are the London police? Are you guys busy? She's clearly speeding. I know she can probably afford the ticket, but I'm just saying, is nobody paying attention? Because this is not safe in any real way. I guess we're establishing Lara as a kind of rebel, and the movie does a really great job of that. But you know, I just kind of expected a police cruiser. I heard, expected a, at some point. It just never happened. I don't know, can Lara just do whatever she wants? Anyway, while she's waiting for her friend, she meets a rival Tomb Raider by the name of James Bond. Alex West. Yes, Alex, that's exactly who he is. This was before he was James Bond. He and Lara have some history of him stealing her stuff. Which, yeah. And his whole thing is that he likes money and Lara likes glory, and apparently, in his eyes, that makes him better. And I feel like in most people's eyes, it's the opposite of that, but whatever, you gotta get paid too, I get that. I understand the logic, but you don't have to be such a jerk about it, Alex. It's also abundantly clear that he has a huge crush on Lara, but, maybe the best way to win a woman's heart is not steal from her. I'm just throwing it out there, dude. Anyway, allegedly the clock expert doesn't actually know what this thing is. And he says, oh yeah, I can't do anything about it in the most suspicious way imaginable. So Lara's like, oh okay, and leaves. However, he knows exactly what it is because he too is affiliated with the Illuminati, and he puts her in contact with Manfred Powell, who has the most luxurious, obnoxious, impossible to fund parties I've ever seen. I love how his little side guy here insists that Manfred Powell is simply a lawyer. Yes, and I get that lawyers are usually pretty wealthy.
A lawyer.
But really, this is not normal for anybody. Manfred here does his best to not act like the suspicious villain the entire time while looking at this thing, even though Lara's clearly onto something here. She doesn't actually say anything though. It was also about this point that I realized that despite the fact she has an entire mansion to herself with only one single butler as far as I'm able to tell, she actually forces Bryce to sleep outside in a tiny trailer, which is freaking hilarious, but it's also a massive security problem because he can easily be locked in here or just shot from the get-go because he has no defenses. Lara's caught in the middle of some gymnastics training here, which is actually a pretty cool scene. I like how the movie tries to set up and show what Lara really does in her spare time when she's not raiding a tomb. She's always training somehow, whether it would be to do flips, or get used to dropping from serious heights, or fighting robots with guns and almost losing her head. Just saying. The point is she's always living on the edge here, and I think that's important to establish when it comes to her. The games did try to play this up a bit by always having Lara's mansion be a feature, and in that mansion it always had some kind of gymnastics area where she clearly does her training, sometimes even offering a time trial if you so choose. But I like how the movies introduce this aspect too. It's also relevant before this place gets shot to oblivion, which is about to happen, that Crystal Dynamics clearly modeled the new mansion in Legend onward based off of this movie because it looks exactly the friggin' same. Anywho, now we get a ridiculously awesome action beat where Lara's fighting these guys in midair on bungee cords. And I gotta say, for being trained assassins, much like most of the enemies in Tomb Raider games, they're really bad at their jobs. She is in the middle of the area. You couldn't have just taken her out at any point. I know it's Lara Croft and she's fast and stuff, but shoot where she's going to be, guys! It also drove me crazy, this entire scene, and I think this is a big flaw. But Lara has ample opportunity to take one of these guys' guns. Her guns are locked down in her armory and she has to get down to them. But there were so many times where she could have stolen one of their guns and used it to shoot back, but she never does it until after she's already at the armory, and she still can't get to it, so then, and only then, does she steal one of their guns. And I thought that that was an obvious thing, and I get that, again, in the games, usually barring some very specific exceptions with certain enemies, you can't actually take the enemy's weapons. You can only take ammo they drop. However, that's dumb, and we know that's dumb. So why doesn't Lara, use some common sense here and just steal one of their assault rifles. It would make this way easier. I think she's going for style points, and it is an awesome scene in that regard, but it feels like it defies sense on some level.